right, big championship fight this weekend. I don't know if you're aware of that, but the welterweight title title holder Keith Thurman is going to take on Manny Pacquiao on Saturday on pay-per-view. Oh, that is the My Radio Show hotline, and we want to let you know that we are honored to have two-time heavyweight champion, Olympic gold medalist who had 76 wins with 68 KOs. He's in the World Boxing Hall of Fame, and he one time sold a heck of a grill. Ladies and gentlemen, big George Foreman on My Radio Show. Hi, George. Thanks for joining us.
I'm happy to be with you.
Listen, George, is it true that you really were, as a kid, a football fan and then wound up becoming a boxer?
Oh, truly, I joined the Job Corps with the hopes that eventually I'd get back into a school system so I could play football. That's what I really wanted to be, a football player.
How'd you go in a different direction then?
Well, it was a coach who assisted in boxing was also had the football team, and he saw me with my fingers I was a defensive tackler, but my fingers spread on the line. He said, "Hey, move those fingers. You're going to get them broken off." He said, "I don't think you should bother with this. You're going to be a good boxer. Leave football alone." He never encouraged me to play football again after that because he thought I'd hurt my finger.
It sounds like you made a good move. You won the gold medal in 1968 at the Summer Olympics in Mexico City. What was that like, George?
Probably the greatest experience I had as an athlete. I was a young boy. I never had a dream to come true. You stand on that platform, you hear your national anthem in the background. Nothing has ever come second to that, really, and for as an athlete.
And here's the thing, it was just getting started for you because at one point then Joe Frazier beats previously undefeated Muhammad Ali. Then in 1973, you fight Frazier for the title at the age of 24, but you're an underdog. And then we remember the Howard Cosell call, still clear as day, George Foreman. Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. You beat Joe Frazier. How'd you do that?
Well, I wish you had said, down goes and stays Frazier, but Frazier kept getting up. I knocked him down 6 times, and each time he was able to get up. The toughest fight I ever had. And I was afraid of Joe Frazier because he had literally beat Muhammad Ali, put his head on his chest, moved his head. I mean, he conquered the man. I thought he was going to definitely, if I didn't hurry up and get him, he was going to do the same and more to me.
Well, a year later, you fought another tough guy, Ken Norton. You beat him. And then you fight Ali in the famous Rumble in the Jungle in Zaire. Can you take us through that fight?
Well, the one thing about it, I had really gotten Joe Frazier good, beaten Ken Norton, and these were the guys who had beaten Muhammad Ali. So I thought the easiest fight I would ever have would be against Muhammad Ali. And I rushed out trying to knock him out in 2 or 3 rounds, never looking at his record. Nobody had ever knocked him out. He survived. I remember one round he looked at me about the 4th round and said, "I made it." And I thought, oh, my God, he made it. And and there I was with lack of structure. He knocked me down in the 8th round, and I tried to get up, but I didn't beat the count. He became the heavyweight champ of the world again. I was devastated.
Well, okay, and I want to talk about the devastation in a moment. That was a point in time, especially for the young people, and they should go back and watch that fight. Ali employed what was called the rope-a-dope strategy. The whole idea is let this guy punch me until he wears down. Did you see that? Obviously, during the fight, you didn't see it as a strategy. Looking back, would you have done things differently?
What happened was I complained that someone put some drugs in my water in Africa, and I still maintain that. But he beat me, and John Condon was at a press conference in Madison Square Garden, the great publicist for Madison Square Garden. Someone asked Muhammad, said, George said he was dope, and John Condon whispered in his ear, "Yeah, rope-a-dope," and Muhammad said, "Yeah, rope-a-dope," and that's how that whole thing started because I said that I had been doped over there. That's what happened. Listen, I gave that guy everything I had. He took it, and he came back with the most fast right hand I'd ever seen in my life. I didn't see it. I felt it.
You were so distraught. Is it true that you tore up the locker room after the fight?
No, not at all.
No. Okay.
I lost.
There
I
were.
wasn't accustomed. I wasn't accustomed to losing, but my heart was broken. You lose something like the
Sure.
heavyweight championship of the world. I was devastated for a couple of years.
There was a rumor that at that time, and I don't know if this was the fight, that Don King, the famous promoter, went to the fight with one fighter. When that fighter lost, he went home with the other. was that
Nah,
you? No, nothing like
nah,
that. All
nah,
right.
nah.
You had one more fight in 1977, and then you abruptly retire. Some folks still thought you were in your prime. Why'd you step away?
I became a minister, of which I still am, at the Church of the Lord Jesus Christ here in Houston, Texas. I'm there Saturdays and Sundays and some Wednesday evening, and that's what I do. That is my profession. Just don't make any money at it. I have to moonlight as grill salesperson.
Well, that worked out pretty well, didn't it, George?
I'm telling you, always trying to sell something. I learned to sell 10 years out of boxing. No one would pay attention to me on the streets as a preacher, so I had to learn to sell to make them stop and listen. And it enabled me to go into Madison Avenue, where I was really successful.
Well, okay, so let's talk about when you were out of boxing. 10 years later, after you retire, in 1994, at age 45, you come out of retirement to fight 26-year-old champion Michael Moorer. Now, I interviewed you days before that fight. You've done thousands of interviews. You wouldn't remember. But I'm going to ask you what I asked you then. What were you thinking?
I left boxing, and I was out for 10 years. I looked up one day, and I was broke. And I thought, man, I wish I had been a golfer. I could have gone back to boxing. But all I had was boxing. I had to get myself back into shape. I worked and I worked and I worked. The next thing you know, people would buy tickets where I fought. And champions of the world, they looked for big paydays and easy paydays. Michael Moorer really thought that he could beat me. He believed the hype.
Well, you go on to win the fight. You become the oldest heavyweight champion of all time at the age of 45. You lost your final fight in 1997, and then you quit for good, but you went on to be, and I was really racking my brain about this, you went on to become one of the most successful athlete endorsers that I can remember, George.
Yeah, I was very successful because I was able to work 24/7. And then I had a good product, the George Foreman grilling machine. It was really good. And when people see something that really works, they'll buy it, even to this day. So I'm always looking for good products now to sell. But and that, to make it say I was successful, it was the product itself that was a success.
I want to go back to the 60s again. As a kid, for me, one of my idols, my main idol at that time as a young boy in the late 60s, was Muhammad Ali. Now, that wasn't a popular thing at my age because of the times. I don't need to tell you about the 60s. And my love for Ali was the same reason my buddies hated him. He was braggadocious. He got all the attention, yet he was an incredible master in the ring. What was your personal impression of Muhammad Ali?
Well, we heard him. I was a little boy, as a matter of fact, in middle school. Coming home one evening, I heard the kids cracking jokes and trying to act like him. And for the first time, I heard boys say, "Hey, look at me, I'm pretty." So everybody loved and talked about this guy. He even had a music record out. He was popular. I didn't know much about him. I just heard it secondhand from everyone else. But everybody was proud and loved that guy.
So you fought Ali, you fought Frazier, you fought Norton, you even fought Holyfield. Who was the best?
Boy, you just can't compare them. You really can't. For instance, Holyfield hit me at one time with maybe 18 punches. And it's like, I don't want that to ever happen again. And Muhammad Ali hit me with that first 1-2 combination that floored me. I wouldn't want that again. Frazier missed me with that left hook, and it sounded like a bullet. Pow! And it scared me more than I've ever been afraid in my life. How can you say which is better? It's a measure of fear.
So the boxing was just incredible in those days. I know a lot of us who are older, we love to go back in time and brag about how great it was back then. And I've covered so many fights, the fights that you had, the fights that Sugar Ray Leonard had, Tyson, De La Hoya, Duran, a lot of these great champions. What do you think of today's boxing and the addition of mixed martial arts?
You know, to be honest with you, I've been watching a lot of the boxers today, especially in lighter weights, middleweights, and such. They're actually grounded, and they've recaptured skills that I thought had disappeared. They bob and they weave, and they make you miss. Canelo Alvarez has taken on the skill factor along with his punching. He's good. I'm telling you, the boxers these days can be compared, if ever, with anyone at any time in the world. They are very good boxing. I admire them. I love it today, watching boxing matches.
So you think that it's really just as good, maybe the promotion not as good as it used to be back in the day when it was King and Aram?
Yeah, you know, it used to be a time when the media, we had writers. Boy, they'd give us names. Big George Foreman, the Louisville Lip, Smoking Joe Frazier. It was writers who would give us these names, and we'd come alive in the imagination of the fans. Today, the writers kind of dropped us a little bit. They don't name us. They don't talk about our training camp anymore, and you can't get it on television. You got to have someone to put it in your brain. It has to be written first, and that's what we're missing. But the fighters these days, I'm telling you, they're the best I've ever seen.
Really?
Great fighter.
I would even take that a step further from those old days, how important Howard Cosell was.
Howard Cosell, boy, he made his name. You know, he was a lawyer originally, so he was smart enough to take that same skill into boxing. Oh, he talked it. He really made boxing something for television for a long time. He really did.
And you guys liked him, though, didn't you? I mean, he and Ali had that adversarial role, but even Ali liked him, didn't he?
Yeah, we loved Howard Cosell. He was nosy, got into our business. The guy was really good for boxing. He loved Muhammad Ali, loved George Foreman, Joe Frazier. Matter of fact, he loved everyone. But he sure would be critical when the time was. And he make you want to go home and say, I'm going to beat Howard Cosell up, but you loved him. You have to love him. I miss that. I miss Howard Cosell to this day.
Yeah. George, let's play a little true false if you don't mind. This is just a kind of a fun part of getting more information out of you with some short answers. So I'm going to ask you some questions, and if you don't mind, answer true or false. In fact, the first one's an easy one. If anybody was listening, they already know the answer to this, but true or false, you are an ordained minister.
True.
True or false, you sold more than 100 million units of the George Foreman grill.
False. I sold over 140 million.
Forgive me then I want to make sure I'm accurate with that. Isn't that something? All right. True or false, you were supposed to play Apollo Creed in the movie Rocky.
Never.
Okay, I made that up. It just sounded good to me. Sounded good to me.
False.
True or false, you have 12 kids. Your 5 boys are all named George.
Oh, false. I only have 10 kids.
Oh.
5 sons named George Edward Foreman.
So when they were all kids and you were yelling George, did all 5 of them come running?
My mom made the problem. Sometimes she'd get upset with me, and by the time she could remember my name, I was out the door, and I didn't have to answer. I said that'll never happen to me. So I say George, and they all come. No one can leave the room.
True or false, you have made more money in endorsements than in your boxing career.
Well, true, but it couldn't have happened without boxing.
Yeah. A friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, it said I should mention Pulpwood to you. Pulpwood Country. Does that mean anything to you, Pulpwood?
East Texas, yes.
And it's a tree out there where they harvested the newspaper. You're a Texas guy. Are you near Marshall, I think? And
that's right, Marshall, Texas. You see all the pulpwood trucks, guys cutting timber in a certain size and taking them to the factories and getting what they can out of the trees. They all do it.
Well, we want to say thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Big George Foreman on my radio show. Thanks so much, Big George, for hanging out with us today. Truly an honor, and continued success in the church for you and out in the community and whatever else you decide to do in the future.
All right. Don't forget me so long next time. Bye.
All right. Thanks a lot. George Foreman with us. What a treat that is to have George on my radio show with Rick Garcia.